Welcome back to Optimal Frequency. I'm Grant. I talk to spirits here at my house. You know the routine. I know the routine. We're right in the middle of a double feature. Let's get back to 1994 and the O.J. murder trial. On the night of June 12th, Simpson was scheduled to board a red-eye flight from Los Angeles International Airport to Chicago, where he was due to play golf the following day at a convention with representatives of Hertz Rental Car Corporation, for whom he was a spokesman. The limousine driver picking up Simpson noted that the house was dark and nobody appeared to be home as he smoked a cigarette and made several calls to his boss to get Simpson's home phone number. He testified that at one point he saw a figure the same size as Simpson enter the house through the front door from where the driveway starts, before the lights came on. He did not see what direction the figure came from. Around the time that the limousine driver witnessed this shadowy figure head towards the south walkway where the bloody glove would later be found, Cato Kalin, who was staying in the guest house, was having a telephone conversation with a friend. At approximately 10:40 p.m., something crashed into the wall of the guest house Kalin was staying in, which he described as 3 thumps, and which he feared was an earthquake. Kalin hung up the phone and ventured outside to investigate the noises, but he did not go directly down the dark south pathway from which the thumps had originated. Instead, he walked to the front of the property where he saw the limousine parked outside. Kalin let the limousine in, and Simpson finally came through the front door a few minutes later, claiming he had overslept. Both the limousine driver and Kalin would later testify that Simpson seemed agitated that night. The limousine driver noted that on the way to the airport, Simpson complained about how hot it was and was sweating and rolled down the window despite it not being a warm night. The driver also testified that he loaded 4 luggage bags into the car that night, one of them being a knapsack that Simpson would not let him touch, and insisted he loaded himself. A porter at the airport testified that Simpson only checked 3 bags that night, and the police determined that the missing luggage was the same knapsack the limousine driver had mentioned earlier. Another witness not heard at the trial claimed he saw Simpson at the airport discarding items from a bag into a trash can. Detectives Tom Lang and Philip Van Adder believe this is how the murder weapon, shoes, and clothes that Simpson wore during the murder were disposed. Was the shadowy figure that the limo driver saw O.J. Simpson? What was the thumping noise outside of the guest house that night? Why was O.J. agitated that night? After learning who the female victim was, the detectives went to Simpson's house and buzzed the intercom for over 30 minutes but received no response. They noted that Simpson's car was parked at an awkward angle with its back end out more than the front, and that there was blood on the door. Detective Van Adder instructed Detective Furman to scale the wall and unlock the gate to allow the other 3 detectives to enter. The detectives would argue they entered without a search warrant because of the circumstances, specifically out of fear that someone inside might be injured. Furman briefly interviewed Kalin, who told the detective that the car belonged to Simpson and that earlier that night he had heard thumps on his wall. In a walk around the premises to inspect what may have caused the thumps, Furman discovered a blood-stained right-hand glove which was determined to be a mate of the left-handed glove found next to the body of Goldman. Did the police jump the gun by entering O.J.'s property without a warrant? Who put that bloody glove on O.J.'s property? Was the glove planted by the police? Is Mark Furman a good cop or a dirty cop? The prosecution presented a total of 108 exhibits, including 61 drops of blood, of DNA evidence allegedly linking Simpson to the murders. With no witnesses to the crime, the prosecution was dependent on DNA as the only physical evidence linking Simpson to the crime. The volume of DNA evidence in this case was unique, and the prosecution believed they could reconstruct how the crime was committed with enough accuracy to resemble an eyewitness account. Marcia Clark stated in her opening statements that there was a trail of blood from the Bundy crime scene through Simpson's Ford Bronco to his bedroom at Rockingham. Simpson's DNA was found on blood drops next to the bloody footprints near the victims at the Bundy crime scene. Probability of error was 1 in 9.7 billion. Simpson's DNA was found on a trail of bloody drops leading away from the victims towards and on the back gate at Bundy. Probability of error was 1 in 200. Simpson, Goldman, and Brown's DNA was found on blood on the outside of the door and inside Simpson's Bronco. Probability of error was 1 in 21 billion. Simpson's DNA was found on blood drops leading from the area where his Bronco was parked at Simpson's Rockingham home to the front door entrance. Simpson, Brown, and Goldman's DNA on a bloody glove found behind his home. Simpson and Brown's DNA was found on blood on a pair of socks in Simpson's bedroom. Probability of error was 1 in 6.8 billion. Simpson was represented by a high-profile defense team referred to as the Dream Team, which was initially led by Robert Shapiro and subsequently directed by Johnny Cochran. The defense initially only claimed that 3 exhibits were planted by the police, but eventually argued that virtually all of the blood evidence against Simpson was planted in a police conspiracy. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. We're really getting into in-depth and a lot of details on this case, but I wanted to bring up the key points of this in case you're like me and you forget, having seen this on TV. And it's really hard to condense this down into a 15-minute segment, something that played out for almost a year on TV, right? But I want to give you guys the main highlight points. I wanted to ask the spirits, break it down specifically each little section. But there's so much evidence in this case that says he murdered those 2 people that I think they had to be inept to lose this damn case. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to ask what I deem to be the most important questions right from the spirits. Let's hear it. I, of course, have no idea what they're going to say. I can assume they're going to say that OJ's guilty. But let's hear what the spirits have to say, and we will see if we can close this off. Why did the prosecution lose this case? Was that blood evidence planted, or was it really real and there from the crime? Did O.J. Simpson murder Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman? Will O.J.'s soul be punished when he dies? Were those Simpson's gloves, the bloody gloves? All right, thank you very much for coming through, spirits, and answering my questions on the O.J. Simpson case. Love, joy, peace, and adventure to all of you. I'm sending out the light. Do you have a message for me before I go? Do you have a message for any of our viewers? If so, please state their name and leave them a message. right, thank you again. Thank you to the viewers for watching. Love, joy, peace, and adventure to all of you. We'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you very much for joining me on that adventure. And again, guys, I want to reiterate, for me, it's not the fact that we want to find out, did OJ do it? I mean, although that's a bonus to have them tell us that he did it. I mean, I kind of figured it would be divulged long before we got to the end, right? You can't ask 35, 40 questions and not at some point say, you know, how did he use the knife? Or what did he kill them with? Or whatever, right? We knew it was coming. So the whole point for me is to find the smaller details that maybe nobody knows about. Like in the beginning when they said that Nicole and Ron were sleeping together, that's pretty big news, I think. From what I researched, everyone said they did not sleep together. So, I mean, again, it depends upon whether you believe these spirits that we're talking to, but I mean, why would they lie? I don't know. So there's lots of little tidbits in there that I found really interesting. Some of it I did find a little gruesome, of course, but I mean, they're just going to tell us what they know, right? We found out that the gloves were indeed OJ's and that none of the evidence was planted, which is basically what got him off the hook. That his defense team, you know, they said it was a conspiracy against him and everything was planted by the cops. So I don't think the results would be the same if the OJ trial happened again today, because the DNA was so new back then, is why I think it went off the rails. I don't really know, can't really say. Maybe God has a higher plan for Mr. Simpson. I don't know. I don't claim to know anything, but thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all in the next video.